Tim, Cam, so pumped to be here with you guys today. We're chatting Skimo kind of as the main focus, but I'd love to start a little bit with setting the context, Tim, hearing from you about your youth, your triathlon career. My understanding, doing some research, you were born in 1970, came up as a swimmer. You had a highly successful pro triathlon career from the mid 90s. Through the 2000s. And really, Tim, your name loomed large in my mind when I was on the CU triathlon team in 2003 and 4. And that was, shortly after your Ironman run, where, 4 years in a row on the podium, two of those as the winner. And that came, I think, on the tail of many attempts at the Ironman. You can fill us in. I think maybe, I don't know, something like 6 times you had in the race before getting the win, which I think is really cool and also aligns with, I was thinking back, I'm so pumped to be here with you guys today. And one of my favorite interviews ever, Mark Allen, the one and
cool.
only, and that's a name for me. And I'm curious, Tim, for you, when I was a kid in the 80s, like that name, Mark Allen, Dave Scott, Scott Tenley, like I was watching those guys on TV, and just it's something stuck with me. Tell me about that for you. Were you following those battles, on the Queen K when you were a kid? You would have been a teenager, in the 80s, or were you just following swimming, or were you just kind of? I think you were in Iowa. Did that stuff even reach you back in those days? Give us some of that context of your early life, Tim.
It really didn't. Growing in Iowa, back then, no internet. All you had
Yeah.
was occasionally a magazine that showed up
Yep.
at your, mailbox. And I actually followed Greg LeMond and cycling a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
than triathlon at that point. And I was a swimmer, so the Olympics was everything, swimming. And I got into triathlon because one of my swim coaches was a triathlete, and then an older swimmer on my team had gone on to be a triathlete and had tried to qualify for the Ironman. And I was just kind of like, well, maybe it's something I could do. And I did one triathlon and I got second place after like a couple of mess ups, like forgetting my helmet in transition and having to go back and get it. And then I didn't do another one for a year. I just was like, well, I did that. That was it. And then I finally kind of decided, maybe I'd really want to do this Ironman thing. And I did one race back when you could qualify at an Olympic distance race, a 2-hour race. You could still qualify for the Ironman. And I qualified my first time out on that. And after that, then I really started following triathlon a lot more. And I was still at Iowa, still in school, and did a couple Ironmans in Hawaii while I was still a student, which was interesting.
Oh, wow.
Kind of
Interesting.
and
that was sort of early 90s?
Early 90s. My first
Yep.
one was 93, I think. And I was,
Okay.
still going to school, trying to train for that. And that, I had more success at the short distance. I made the Goodwill Games team, the Pan American Games team. And that it still hadn't been announced for the Olympics. And so, but that was my ultimate goal. As soon as triathlon was announced for the Olympics, that's what I wanted to do. And so Ironman was still just like once a year. It was at the end of the year. It's in October. So I would go do that, but it wasn't the focus early on. But yeah, I was always a cycling fan. It was, I had a picture of Greg LeMond on my stem, not Mark Allen. And
on your stem.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And what's
sweet,
funny
man.
is that changed to in 93, that picture changed to when Lance Armstrong won the world championships. And I had that
I was
picture
going to
on my
ask you about
stem.
that because you're about the same age as Lance, and I had one. Lance had an early foray into triathlon.
Yep.
I'm guessing before you. Was he out of it by the time you got into it?
By the time I got into it, he had switched to cycling, but it was still an influence. We had kind of ran in the same circles of a couple of different sponsors. And so, that was, for some reason, when you spend your whole life looking at the black line of a swimming pool as a swimmer, once you taste cycling, it's such a different sport. And it's I had a lot of fun riding the bike. And it was like an escape from the pool almost. And
Mm,
so I really was more infatuated with cycling than triathlon until I actually moved to Boulder. And
yep.
I mean, I'll never forget, I was riding out of town in Boulder the first week I was there, and coming the other direction, coming back into town was Mark Allen. And,
Yeah.
right,
Oh, really?
I was with my brother and we were both
Yeah.
like, holy crap, that's Mark Allen,
Yeah.
and all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're in it, and
Uh-huh.
that's kind of when things really changed at that point, and triathlon became 100% focus.
Yeah. And when would that have been when you moved to Boulder? Was that right out of college or early 90s or?
Yeah, yep, exactly. Like 90, I think 94, 95 was my first year in Boulder. Um,
Yep.
yeah, because I still raced amateur uh, when I moved to Boulder. We were still trying to like think about making the Olympic team and
Mm,
um, that kind of thing. And back then, you couldn't be a professional and be in the Olympics, so we were staying age
that's
group and
right. Yeah.
amateur as
Yeah.
long as we could, and give it. They let us race with the pros, and I was beating the
Mm,
pros, but we
yeah.
couldn't accept the prize money, so I was giving up tens of thousands of dollars at this point and
Yeah. Wow.
struggling, a struggling athlete, simply because of that Olympic dream.
Wow. Was there any so triathlon finally comes to the Olympics, Sydney 2000. Was
Yep.
there any hope in those years that it might be in the Olympics Atlanta 96?
Not really. I mean, we had made it to the Pan Am Games, and that was kind of a stepping stone,
Yep.
but they weren't really organized. I mean, once kind of the governing bodies got involved, that's when things kind of went downhill for me. Like they just
Mm,
made it so hard. If you didn't have the money or the support to chase what you needed points to get to the Olympics, and so to have enough qualifiers for the U.S. to get to the Olympics, and chasing those points required huge amounts of money. And our USA Triathlon wasn't supporting the athletes the way they probably needed to be chasing those points. And so that's when it became tough. I was driving around the country to get points instead of flying around the world to get points.
yeah. Oh, I'm seeing Cam over there nodding his head. Cam's sitting in an apartment in Chamonix with Arthur Whitehead. These guys are on, for audience members, if you're not following, Team USA Skimo.
Yep.
And dude, they are going for points. These
Oh,
guys are busting their
I'm
ass
seeing so many
on
similarities with the
yeah,
whole situation. That
on the World Cup,
Yep.
not much funding. They're
Yep.
scrambling, man. We got a
It's
race
tough.
over here in Austria. Like,
I
guys, will we
don't
rent the
envy you,
car?
Cam.
One before we get to that though, just a couple final triathlon questions because I'm so fascinated by all this. Like, as you learn more about triathlon, that previous generation, the Mark Allen, Dave Scott, those are like kind of the biggest names, at least at the Ironman distance.
Yep.
Did any of those guys, did you end up meeting them? Were they mentors? Did any of those character traits resonate with you? Like for me, for some reason, even as a little kid, there was something about Mark Allen. And I remember like on the Iron Man piece, here's this Zen master and kind of his spirituality connection with the big island. Like even as a kid, somehow that really connected with me. What resonated with you with any of these characters, or even your friendly sort of rivals like Peter Reed, who's kind of one of your contemporaries. Any other thoughts on those people?
Yeah, I kind of bridged that gap between that group of guys like Mark Allen, Dave Scott. I mean, I
Yeah,
raced those guys. I was
yeah,
on
yeah,
the podium in Kona with Mark Allen's last win in '95 was the first year, my pro year, and I got 10th.
yeah, yeah.
And so I had this connection with all of them at one
Mhm.
point or another. Like I had gotten third and gotten second. Those guys were done racing. Although Dave Scott did race the year I
Well,
won.
at 40, right?
Yeah,
He almost
yeah.
was that the one he almost won? Kind of
Well,
that
he got
promo kid.
second, but then at
Yeah.
45 he came back, and
Oh,
that's
that's
I
yeah,
think the year I won.
yeah.
And but I had, they all kind of tried to help me a little bit. I don't think they
Mm,
really believed that I could win, but Dave kind of said you need to do this, and then I used to go train in Santa Cruz a bit, and Mark lived out there, and he said maybe you need to do this, and um, it comes down to it. You don't know you can win until you win, and
mm,
getting second and getting third and second were great stepping stones. I mean, third was a lot easier than second, meaning like second sucks. Getting second place fueled me for an entire year. I was so angry for a year after getting
mm.
second. and that was the fuel. But it gives you that taste. And, and that year I got second, it was one mistake, one gel basically that I missed that caused me to get that second place. And,
Yeah.
so racing from like being on the podium with Mark Allen and then all the way to when Crowe and was winning in Kona. So I spanned this like almost 20-year gap, and, getting close to the podium with those guys in the later years as well. But I was always doing my own thing. I mean, Peter Reed and I trained together a couple of seasons until we became so competitive that training together didn't really work out that well. But that's kind of the difference I think that I'm seeing now in the sports is these guys definitely train together. And they have these training groups, and I think you're just going to see the speed from the shorter course taking over the long course. And back when I was racing, it was like you made that decision. You're going to go long course or you're going to go short course. And once the Olympic fiasco kind of happened and I crashed out at the Olympic trials, I was like, I'm all in for long course. And it was a good decision for me because that was more what I enjoyed.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So tell us about that, crashing out at that. That would have been in anticipation of Olympics 2000, where the trials in what, early
They were in
2099.
Texas.
Did you have a
Yeah.
bike crash or?
Well, I was close to the points, and if I would have gotten the points, I would have had a really good chance of making the team. And so I was crashed in this in basically the last chance to get those points to qualify.
Yeah.
And it just made it an easy decision for me. I went right from
Yeah.
there and said, "All right, go to Ironman New Zealand now," and that's it.
Yeah, yeah, and then shortly thereafter, you have two podiums and then two wins at the
Yeah,
Ironman Kona. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
huh?
And
That,
it just, you have to focus on kind of, I mean, Ironman is just a completely different beast. 8-hour race versus 2-hour race.
yeah,
It's hard to do both.
yeah, yeah, and that's again, I promise we'll get to Skimo, but you see right now, like the Norwegians, in Ironman, you hear a lot about the science and Norwegian training method. The double
Yep.
thresholds, the 200 grams of carbs per hour. I'm sure you guys
Well,
are doing that.
that's no, I mean, I think that is the biggest change in everything is
Yes.
the
Yeah.
fueling. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, that wasn't even, we were shooting for 60 grams of carbs and we were
Hmm.
still puking it up, but
Yes. Yeah.
now, I mean, you got to train to get 120 grams of
Yep.
carbs in. And, I mean, there's so many differences, the super shoes, the
Yep.
nutrition, the bike technology, it's massively different.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
were,
Yeah. And
I look at,
it all
yeah,
builds. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
I mean, I look
my.
back at, I was racing a marathon in racing flats, with no cushion, and
Yep.
we'd get done and just be beat up. And now these guys are, able to go for a run after running a marathon, so big
Hmm.
differences.
Yeah, the fueling. My good friend and another superstar, Josiah Middaugh. He made the comment that
Yep.
it turns out that fueling adequately, and what we stuff that we would never consider 10, 15 years ago. He's like, this is the new doping.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
eat enough
Yeah.
and you recover enough, and man, wow, you don't bonk.
Yep.
Makes a big difference. All right,
Yeah.
Camp Skimo. What's resonating with you? Here it comes. Triathlon Olympics 2000. Skimo's coming now. Team USA, man, you guys are hustling. You're working hard. You're going for the points. Hoping to make things happen. What do you think? What's resonating here, Cam?
Yeah, this is where we've all understood Skimo to be, as we keep saying triathlon in the 90s is our um, the
Yep.
model that we're all following, and we have growing pains because of it, but it's really exciting and we're all trying to figure out where we slot in with it. So there's people that are interested in longer races, there's people that are coming from different backgrounds, but everyone's kind of focused in on the Olympic events, just like Tim did, and we're seeing where we all land, right where Tim was in 1999, but now it's 2025. So it's interesting to hear about your the qualifying experience and where you went from there, Tim. Especially to crash out of the trials when you were right there with points, and then you didn't go from there to winning Ironman Worlds. You then had, was it the third and then the
Yep.
second and then the 2 wins? Yeah, so like,
Yep.
but so when you got, talk to us more about that. So you crashed out. How did that, well, not crashed out, you crashed and then that changed your qualifying prospects. And then you started racing, maybe surprised yourself with a third, disappointed yourself with a second, and then went to winning, or correct me, how did that go?
Yeah, that was kind of it. You know, the decision, like, I was just kind of upset with the whole process of the Olympic trials. Like, I felt like I was one of the best short course guys. Like, I deserved to be there at the Olympics. And I understood that there was a process of qualification and stuff, but it didn't really make sense to me. And so once I crashed, I was like, that's it. There's no other option. There's no like coach's decision to say, hey, we got to give Tim another chance here at the trials, like let him into the actual trials race. And like, he was this close to points and, you know, probably one of two of the fastest runners at that point to get off the bike and get going. And once I kind of just got really frustrated with the system, I just, in my head, I was like, all right, that's it. I am going to full Ironman. That I knew that was what I really loved anyway. I mean, I had been doing the Hawaii Ironman since I was, 20 years old anyway, as just kind of an experience and training. And now, I had been 10th, in Hawaii without really focusing on it. And so that gave me hope that once I actually trained for it and I, put in the time, that I could do better. And, that once I was able to train for the marathon, because that's really what it is. I could go out and ride, 112 miles with the leaders already, but the marathon is what takes time to train for. It takes years to build up the resilience to actually train the way you need to train.
Yeah.
And so once I was able to do that, that made all the difference in the world, and stay healthy, and so, I went to New Zealand and did an Ironman down there and immediately got fourth or something. And then the next year went back and won it. And that was my progression. Winning an Ironman outside of Hawaii, that set the stage to do well in Hawaii and gives you the confidence. And, and then picking up some sponsors. And once you have the support you need, that makes all the difference in the world. And I picked up some great sponsors along the way that really believed in me and gave me the opportunity to actually train instead of just race. I could stay home, train, because that's what Ironman takes, is actual training, not just racing all the time and traveling all the time. But I stayed at my home base. I trained hard. And then, you performed at Hawaii, and Hawaii became my Christmas and my birthday every year. Everything revolved around that. And that can be a bad thing as well. Like, that's hard on my wife and everything, but that's what it takes. I mean, once you do well at Hawaii, that's all anybody cares about. And so it's similar to the Olympics. Like, if you get a gold medal at the Olympics and you're going to go back the next time, that's all that matters. If you don't get gold again, you're a failure in your own heart and in most people's eyes. I mean, I give it to the people that keep going back at, look at Shaun White and, some of these Olympians that, they go out and it to me, the pressure is unbelievable for them to perform. I mean, look at this past weekend, Lindsey Vonn coming out of retirement and getting, third at the finals. To me, that is the coolest thing I think I've ever seen in skiing. I love those stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Tim, as triathlon goes to the Olympics, did that expand the profile of the sport, and was it in some ways helpful, even though you have, okay, here's the Olympic discipline, the Olympic distance, what we now call it, versus the Ironman distance, in some ways a separate thing, in the consumer's mind, in the eye of the public, the Ironman is what people know about. You have people, they've never done a triathlon, they say, I'm going to do the Ironman, and they do it. Like, they don't even do, whatever Olympics, ITU, it's just a whole different thing. But having the sport in the Olympics, did that help the profile? And did it in some ways, whatever you have, Pearl Izumi or these brands, like maybe that helps you as a pro athlete, just that the profile is growing? And that could, Skimo's small niche, most Cam and the other, these top elite level world class athletes, there's not much funding in the sport right now, and most people are combining it with other jobs at least sometimes of the year, because that's
Yeah.
what's needed to get by. What do you think? Is that something maybe we could hope for with Skimo, with the Olympics, even though that Olympic discipline, it's not quite your average Skimo athlete is not going to do a 3-minute sprint, probably, just because it's not,
Right.
most people aren't really that interested, which is fine.
Yeah, I actually, it will definitely help. I mean, triathlon kind of became two sports at that point.
Mm,
You had Ironman, and then you had the Olympic distance, and the Olympic, because it had switched to like the drafting format in the Olympics,
yep.
it definitely became kind of two separate sports. And honestly, every time, if you went out, even today, I think if you go out and say I'm a triathlete, people are like, "Oh, have you done that Ironman in Hawaii?" They still ask that, but the Olympic race is super legitimate, and it's the most competitive form of triathlon racing at this point, I believe. I mean, those guys are, blazing. I mean, they're running
Mm-hmm.
10Ks that for some of these, countries, they could make their Olympic
Yeah,
10K team.
astronomical. It's so cool.
Yes, and I can definitely see the same thing happening in Skimo, and that's the advice that I give these guys. I mean, I think like Piramenta just happened, and you see the crowds up there. I had a couple friends over there doing that, and I mean that's what they're showing in the NBC previews, is they're showing that kind of stuff, and that's going to draw people. But I think the sprint format is going to be very exciting, and people are going to be like, "What is this sport?"
Mm-hmm.
I know that coaching my kids here in Steamboat, like we have a few different kinds of workouts, and the sprint, like that's going to draw more kids in than if you had the long course. Like when I was a swimmer, who wants to be a distance swimmer? I didn't want to swim the 500 or the, I mean, no way. We want to do the sprints. I was a 100 backstroker. That was my event,
Yeah.
and these kids, yeah, we have our endurance days, but we make them fun, big adventure days where we're doing boot packs and out in the woods and, going over traverses. And, then we have our interval days, and they like the short intervals when you make them fun and you set up a sprint course. To me, that is going to draw more of these kids in. And, but I think as they age, they'll get more into that format of, and that's, hopefully what we'll see is this lifelong sport where maybe they start in the sprint division, and they, that goes through the Olympics, and then they branch out, to the marathon and the ultra marathon of Skimo, and that. So I think the sprint format and the mixed relay is a great way to start Skimo. I'd love to see them add, an individual race down the road, or even, I really like the idea of putting a vertical in first, because
Mm-hmm.
that's like a pure form of fitness. And those guys, I mean, I love seeing that race. So there's so much room for growth. You can look at the climbing format at the Olympics as well, where they're continuing to add events. Instead of just combining all the events as one medal, now they're going to have two medals, and then eventually they'll have 3 different medals for 3 different events. And I know Skimo is going to have the relay and the sprint, and once we hit Utah, I got to believe they're going to add another event.
Tim, I just love what you said, because a lot of that is, well, the first half of everything you said is where I'm hoping people arrive at, is like, yes, the relay and sprint are really different from Piramenta and why we all got into the sport. And if NBC showing Piramenta and then saying, okay, the reason people are putting their skis on their back in this 3-minute sprint race is because blah, blah, blah. And then they show people climbing up the Arête de la Grande Mont. And then it all makes sense. But what I didn't, or what I've never thought about before, that I think is a really, really brilliant point, and maybe is going to change the narrative of all this too, is that it's all the adults that got into Skimo that are like, oh, well, why are we doing the sprint and relay? That's not Skimo. But we haven't thought about it is a more accessible way for kids to get into it. Like, they can do their training sessions in less than an hour on the ski resort. They learn all the skills to get really, really good at these fundamentals. And then as they get older, they can go do longer races. Like that's actually brilliant. Like it kind of turns the whole argument on its head of nobody, quote unquote, nobody does skimo sprinting recreationally. It's like, well, kids might. And then it's
Yeah.
actually an
Yeah.
amazing
Ding, ding,
foundation for
ding.
the rest of the
That's
sport.
awesome,
Yeah.
Kim. Yeah.
Well, and that's what we do here in Steamboat is like, in most towns in the summertime, they have a weekly mountain bike race or the cyclocross series where, everybody comes out and just does it. And those are short track races. And, so in town here, we try to set up these little skimo races where, at least with my kids, we set up a short little course and it's like, all right, we're going. And then the town challenge races, the first race of the year is always just a circuit race. And it includes, a quick little boot pack, quick little kick turns, and then a quick ski down this, crazy face that hardly has any snow on it in late November, early December. And then we slowly build the races from there for the town challenge. And they become these, off-piste adventure races that everybody pretty much loves, but the kids definitely, they thrive on that, the competition with their peers. I mean, we have our last race this week on Thursday night, and my kids are dominating the top of the series over the adults that are in their series as well. And it's like coming down to this last race, who's going to win the series between 3 or 4 of each of my kids in each division, and they love that. And it's the sprint definitely emphasizes that. If you have this long distance race, somebody's going to get out front and be 5 minutes out, 6 minutes out, and there's not going to be that head-to-head competition. And kids want head-to-head competition. They thrive on it. And so I think I was actually, at first when the Olympics, they announced the scheme, I was like, oh, they're not going to have an individual, but I quickly turned that around and like, this is just like triathlon. It's going to make for action-packed TV. You're not going to have, Remy off the front by 5 minutes. You're going to have these guys, these just basically elbowing each other. It could become a contact sport out there, So I think it's going to make for good TV.
Yeah, I
It
love
is
it.
for sure.
Man,
Yeah.
I've had the same experience watching the Cam and these other, men and women of Team USA and the international competitors in the sprint and in the mixed relay. And I mean, Tim, it literally is a contact sport. I mean, people, God, going around those diamonds and into the transition areas. I mean, there's elbows and no foul play, but it's fast and everyone's right together, and highly technical. Let's a little bit more back to your narrative, Tim. So you wrap up the triathlon, I think 2010, 2012, you have a child sometime around there. Tell us about that transition period. I'm always curious about that you have this whole identity, this way of life, and you're redefining, like, how did that go? Was it easy? Was it helpful? Was it smooth? How did your outlook and
None of the above.
mindset? Yeah, okay. Well, it's usually not. It's usually like
No,
feels like
it is a tough transition.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, basically being a pro athlete my whole adult life, and so that transition, once I thought I was going to have one more year of racing. I like kind of, my last race was this amazing, or what turned out to be my last race was this pretty much, or last Ironman was this amazing race in Norway called the Norseman Extreme. And it's hardest race you can imagine, basically. And that, my wife was pregnant at the time. We were going to have our daughter. And I think I had one more like mountain bike triathlon, Xterra, after that. And I was super psyched, going to become a dad, but I fully expected to race that next season. But we kind of, like every athlete, you plan everything around your off season. And so, yeah, we had a baby in the off season, and it was like December 30th, my daughter was born, and she was born, and I like took one look at her, held her for the first time, and was like, I am so done racing. I don't ever want to leave this girl. I don't want to travel the world anymore. I want to be home with this one. And my wife had this kind of thriving business. And I was like, I'm a home. I'll be a stay-at-home dad now. This is fine with me. And that I was very lucky that happened, meaning because I think I could have gone pretty dark. Like if you just stop after 20 years and you're like, I'm done racing, what do I do now? because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. There were opportunities to go work for some cycling teams and stuff like that, but I was just, I had traveled so much and I was so worn out from all of that. Like I still don't travel very much because it just, you go 15 years of 100,000-mile years flying, you're kind of done. And, but I spent a couple years basically staying home with my daughter, and my wife would work, and I was constantly looking for that next thing. And, you know, my wife had been a professional athlete as well, triathlete and Olympic trials swimmer. And when she transitioned out of the sport, she started a business, and that took her, like, mentally, it was perfect. You know, she transitioned to this next thing that she loved even more than sport. And I just figured that would happen to me as well. And it took someone else saying, you know, Tim, you don't quite get it. Your wife is one of the lucky ones. And most people don't have that next thing to transition to. And it took me, that was my identity, especially living in Boulder still. My identity was triathlete, and everybody, that's all they ever want to talk to you about, all they ever ask you about. And it took a long time to get out of that. I actually went back to school. You know, I had left school with 8 credit hours left when I was in college to go train and race around the world. Yeah. And so I went back, finished my degree at 40, you know, and exercise phys, and got into, you know, PT type stuff and training people. And that helped a little bit, but I was still stuck in Boulder, and we had moved to the other side of town. It was great. And South Boulder, where, you know, you're closer to the Flatirons. And and that's basically when I picked up Skimo. You know, the equipment had changed enough by that point that I was like, hey, it's light enough that I enjoy going uphill instead of just skiing downhill. And so I was driving to Eldora and going up, you know, into the Indian Peaks in the spring and all that. But once, like, we saw what was going to happen with COVID, we made the move. Like, my daughter, they were like, you're not going to be in school. And so we've been up in Steamboat now for 5 years, and I feel more a part of this community than I ever did in Boulder for the 20 years I lived in Boulder. You know, that was my main goal. I first got involved with Steamboat Springs Winter Sports Club up here. And I remember we came to town, and I saw the Nordic team bounding up the ski slopes with poles in the summer when we were visiting. And I was like, I got to be a part of that. That's the kind of workout I want to, you know, do with these kids. And it's been life-changing ever since. So that's where I've transitioned to, is giving everything I've learned and my energy back to these kids. And, you know, I had a couple of coaches in high school that influenced me, where I was like, that's what I want my life to be like. These guys are awesome. You know, you look up to them, and I felt like I could do that here and, you know, teach these kids that there's more to life than just, you know, the traditional way of life. You know, you can create a fun life around things that you love in an alternate way and still be very successful. It doesn't have to be a pro athlete or anything, but, you know, the lifelong sport, I'm such a firm believer in exercise produces, you know, and outside exercise, not gym exercise, you know, it makes you healthier in every aspect. And that's, you know, that's the way I'm raising my daughter, and I'm trying to pass it on to all these high school kids that I'm coaching now.
Yeah. Oh man.
But it was a very tough transition. I mean, it was a roller coaster of ups and downs, and lost, you know, and I talked to many athletes, and it is tough. I mean, you see it in pro football players, you know, you read about it, and I wouldn't want to go through it again. I would definitely try and prepare more, have something, at least something to dive into. And, but, you know, everything's turned out great. I'm very, very happy at this point.
Yeah. Oh man, thanks for sharing all that, Tim. And shout out to, first of all, I'm just so glad that you found this place now. And the key word, probably community. You know, you're finding it in the town, but also through, you know, your being, your spirit, and through the coaching, making a difference, making an impact. That's huge. And for the listeners, just quick side note, if people don't know, Tim's wife, Nicole, you know, former pro athlete. And then I think her main business there was Skirt Sports, which, you know, kind of went, I never actually got a skirt, but I know it went gangbusters. So shout out to Nicole. And I'm seeing, Tim, so many parallels honestly to my own life. Like my kids were born about that same age. I also moved during COVID from the Front Range to Salida and have found
Yeah.
a new sense of community that's been really fulfilling. And I have to say, and this is kind of a shout out to, it could be moms, but maybe especially dads, if you're finding yourself in that time period being the primary caregiver of young kids, like that's the same thing I was doing. My wife's business was booming.
Yeah.
Where am I with athletics, with career coaching? And I loved it. And it was, like you said, you can't understand the love that you have for a kid until you have one. And I was super grateful to do it. And man, it was hella hard. And it was really hard for me, identity wise, at times to be the only dad or maybe one of the only dads at the park with the little kids and the moms, and what does that say
Yeah.
about me? What does it say about my identity? There were tough moments, and for
Yeah.
me, professional support psychologically became essential. One guy, Doug Jowdy, based in Boulder. I don't know if you know him, but he's a kind of
No.
sports psychologist who's worked with Anton Apollono and other Olympians. He really helped me through, grappling with some of that stuff in hard years. Taking care of little kids, man, it is. Boy, I had so many days where like, man, if I could just get on a bike or run for 6 hours, like, boy, that would be so much easier than
Yeah.
this.
I was fitting anything I could during her nap time,
Yeah. There you go. Yep.
well, and it also like, and to this day, I still get up like 4 in the morning and I get my
Mm.
time for myself and I'm still back here to get her to school. Um, but like you said, you don't know a love until you have your own kid. I mean, I never actually thought I wanted to be a dad. And,
Mm.
once I think your wife says she wants to have a kid, you're either in or you're out. And so, I mean,
Yep.
I is absolute best decision I ever made. And I think those first few years that I spent with my daughter have made the relationship I have with her something that
Yes.
a lot of parents don't have, moms or dads. And
Yep.
to this day, like we are like buddies, like adventure buddies, everything. And I mean, I love her with all my heart. And my wife and I have very different relationships with our daughter. And, it's making her into this wonderful, amazing little girl. And I can't wait to, every transition that she goes through, I missed the last part where she's growing up, but I'm so looking forward to the next stage. And it's going by so quick that you have to be involved in every aspect of it or it's not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. How was it? Everyone knows that Boulder is the center of the universe. How was it? Moving away from Boulder. Was it hard? Had it become an obvious choice, or was it a
Oh, it
struggle in
was
some ways?
not. It was not hard. I remember driving up here because we kind of moved ourselves. We know as an athlete, you kind of live minimalistically, and I loaded up a moving truck. We had lived in South Boulder, and I think I made 2 trips up here in a moving truck. And on that final trip, when I knew I wasn't going back, I mean, I had the biggest grin on my face. Music's playing in the moving van, and I was like, this couldn't be a better move. And we lucked out with the house. We live right downtown, Steamboat, in Old
Mm,
Town. Great
excellent.
neighbors. I mean, we're minutes from trails and the mountain. And honestly, I've been back to Boulder twice in 5 years since I moved up here, and those were for like dental appointments. When I hadn't found my dentist up here yet, and this is when Nicole's parents lived down in Boulder, so I just did not. I
Mm,
don't miss it. I'm still in the pinch me phase up here, and it's been 5 years. I mean,
yeah.
I do everything up here. I mean, I'm on the mountain every single day. In the wintertime, I'm dreading the end of winter here, but I love it. I mean, just best decision we ever made for sure. And I think my wife would say the same thing. My daughter's like, "This is so much better than Boulder," you know. So yeah, it was a very easy move after. I mean, Boulder changed so much from when I moved there in 93, 94 to where it is now, or when we moved away. And it it served its purpose very well when I was there, and I loved it. And I thought it was, the end all be all of endurance training and what life I wanted. But as you get older, you change a little bit, and now my needs are, in a smaller mountain town community for sure.
Back to Skimo minutia. Cam, what do you think? Any questions brewing in your mind there?
I'm
I've got
just
one for Cam.
Ooh,
Uh-oh.
Tim's
Let's
go
hear it,
Tim.
Tim.
Well, well, like when I mean, now that it is like the sprint in the Olympics, is it in your head like, damn, I wish I was younger and had got, like these kids coming up, they know the sprint is the format. It's like when I was in triathlon, it's like these guys who are growing up training for the Olympic format, they've got such an advantage. And here you are, you've got this, you didn't start out like training for the sprint that this Olympics has become. And, that's tough in your head. I think that switch is like, wow, I'm kind of going backwards. I was this endurance beast, and a lot of the stuff I do is endurance, but I've got to fire those fast twitch fibers and really change things. I mean, transitions are everything. And that's, so are you through that? Are you through the kind of woe is me? I wish I would have started this sprint stuff earlier. Or are you just all in it? Like I'm digging in. I can do this no matter what.
Yeah, I mean the woe is me is over for sure. But
Yeah.
it yeah, like I was really disappointed. So that was June of 2021 when they announced what
Yep.
the events would be. Or no, that was June of 22 when they made the final switch, and we
Yeah.
all threw our hands up in the air of like, this isn't Skimo, blah blah blah. And then I
Yep.
spent the next 2 years injured and not doing anything and wishing that I was just out
Right.
there sprint racing. And so I think
Yeah.
where I really fell behind was not so much like those first few years of World Cup racing for me, where if there was a vertical, then an individual, then a sprint, we would all race the vertical and individual and be like, oh, do you guys just want to head back to the US 2 days earlier instead of waiting till Sunday and doing the sprint? Because like no one really cares about it. I'm like,
Right.
oh, who won the sprint last weekend? Like no one really knew. Like it wasn't a focus of
Yeah.
anyone on the World Cup. And so like it's not so much that I'm catching up from that. It's that these last 2 years when not just the young kids, but everybody went all in and learned how to fold their
Right.
skins all special for a 12-second skins on transition and modified their suits and changed their training and were competing in sprint and relays and practice together. The last 2 years
Yeah.
was when I was not doing anything. And so I think that's where I fell
Right.
behind. And so I've tried to make that catch up process in 1 year. And I'm really proud of where I've come. Like the split times in
Oh
the
yeah.
relays in particular and qualifications, like I'm right there with the rest of the guys. But now we're at the point where there's one more World Cup this season and then one more in December of this year to determine who will be in the Olympics. And we are right there.
Yeah.
We're actually just on the outside looking into the bubble after the last few races. And so,
Ugh.
yeah, I mean, my mind's running with like, we're going to know a lot more after this next weekend, but um, it's my absolute number one goal in sport, and my priority right now is making it to those games. But then yeah, I'm also thinking about what things will look like otherwise. And so it's
Yeah.
yeah, hearing you talking about then I got into Ironman and I had this great career and did Norseman, and then yeah, started a family and things are great. And so it's cool to yeah, cool to hear your successful switch past it. And oh gosh, where was I going? Yeah, but with the relay and sprint racing and like our motivations for doing it outside of just qualifying for that 2 days of
Yep.
racing in the Olympics next year that 18 men and 18 women will do, and no one else outside of those, like it'll be like an hour of racing total, right? That'll happen on those slopes
Yeah.
of Borneo
Yeah.
for Skimo. And that's what we're all focused on, that only 36 people will do of that hour of racing. But
Yeah.
I
Oh,
to loop back to what you asked of like where am I with the relay, if I've had a lot of fun changing my training around it and getting fast and getting to the point where I'm not just hoping that the course will be a little bit longer than regulation and hoping that the course will be
Right.
a little bit higher altitude than regulation. Like I can now look at 2 minute climbs and be like, sweet, like I can't wait to just rage up that thing and make the
Yeah.
difference against my competitors. And that's a really fun place to be. And it might, in retrospect, just end up being this year for me. Or, I mean, of course, no matter what happens, I'm going to be going for 2030 because I'm 29 years old. right now, and
Yeah.
the relay presumably will still be in 4 years. Hopefully, the individual as well. Like you were talking about, hoping for 2034. The current
Yep.
track is that we're gunning for individual in 2030. And so I'll be back to doing it in 4 years anyway. But regardless of what happens,
Yep.
regardless of if we qualify, regardless of anything else, like I've had a ton of fun changing my training around something totally new, and picking up basically a whole new physiology and focus, and like being all
Well,
in
it's
with
only
the
going to help
team.
you.
Yeah,
It's only going to
totally.
help you in your
Yeah.
longer stuff afterwards. I mean, we see that all the time. It's like you build that sprint, and then it carries over to the distance. You got to go fast to go long and slow. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I've had a great time. It's been awesome. My body feels really good, and I've had a really fun time kind of being all in with the team, chasing this collective goal.
that's
And
awesome.
I really hope it ends in qualification. And if it doesn't, then it's been really fun, and it
Awesome.
feels good. Feels really good.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Cam. A lot of wisdom there. And for the listeners, by the time you hear this, Cam and Team USA will have done that final, at least spring 2025 qualifier. We'll give you an update of where things are at. Like you said, there's still one final World Cup, December 2025, that impacts Olympic qualifying for spring of 26. So we'll give you an update. Thanks for sharing that, Cam. A lot of wisdom for sure. I got a training question for both of you guys. So Tim, I've heard you say that the outdoor training, the adventure, and I think this maybe was a shift for you post pro athlete career, where pro triathlete, it's numbers, it's the data, what's the next workout, like long bike ride, now I got to do this transition run, that stuff's always in your mind, and now you have a sense of adventure, going out with a camera, maybe pausing to, I can imagine, I do this, pause in nature and connect with something bigger in a spiritual way. Like that for me has become just as important as, what does a power meter say, or whatever. So that outdoor exercise, that's fueling the brain, the spirit, the energy, all that. And I know both of you guys, I've heard you talk about the chief importance of indoor strength specificity, and that's my question. Maybe we'll do first Tim and then Cam. Core work, upper body work, lateral work, both you guys talk about all this single leg stability stuff. What role does that play in your training? And maybe each of you tell us, if you had, let's say, 3 exercises, people listening to this, they're like, I want to do that. Like, what should we do? Is it just standing on one leg and brushing our teeth with our eyes closed, or what should we be doing? Go ahead, Tim, you first.
Well, my philosophy these days is the gym work is actually for my health and my
Hmm.
physical well-being. Anything, my outdoor endurance work is for my head and for my mental well-being. And I'm zero data when I'm outside. No watches, no Strava, no. I mean, I go out. Don't really have a plan when I go out for myself. It's just to go out, get a workout in, and be in nature. I stop for tons of pictures, looking for that moment of awe that I need every day. That people say is so important, and I have no problem finding that on a daily
Mm-hmm.
basis. But I am in the gym every single day doing something. Um, and that's why, like, I've always made a purpose to set up a home gym, so there's no reason to ever skip it, and uh, it has kept me healthy, over these years. Knock on wood, I don't have any of these overuse injuries, and I don't have many traumatic type things because I think I can save myself by being strong. Um,
Mm.
I just make a point, and I go into all the little muscles, the big muscles, all of it to keep everything firing in the right direction. Um, I do a ton of single leg stuff, ton of body weight stuff. I do push weights around, but you can make any zero weight hard by doing the right exercise, like single leg, single arm, all this stuff. I think skater squats, single leg skater squats, are one of my favorite exercises. It's kind of pistol squat, but with your leg going behind you instead of in front of you. Pull-ups, as we get older, grip strength, they talk about grip strength being an indicator of if you're getting old or not. And honestly, I do probably over 100 pull-ups a day, every single day. That started when I was back in Boulder. When I stopped racing, I was like, I had been a swimmer for my whole life, and yet I sucked at pull-ups. And I was like, all right, no more. And so I do all my pull-ups on a climbing hangboard. And so I'm doing fingertip pull-ups and, full grip pull-ups, but my grip strength is through the roof. So between the skater squats, the pull-ups, and then I throw in everything else, deadlifts and things like that, keeping that posterior chain really strong. Those are the keys in the gym, and the core work, obviously. But, I'm always doing it. My wife would, she'd laugh at that question when you're asking me, because she's like, when is he not doing something? But I cherish my time outside, whether it is with my wife or daughters, on a backcountry ski and introducing them to something that I had, found, or it's a mountain bike ride, or it's out with the kids that I'm coaching and, showing them something new or learning something from them. I mean, they all go downhill, both on skis and mountain bikes, faster than I can imagine, because everything's a race to them. I enjoy every turn, whether it's on a berm of a mountain bike or on my skis. I'm all about the turn, and these kids, it's like just straight downhill. So, and that keeps me on my toes. I'm like, all right, I guess we're going fast, and, at my age, I'm pretty proud of where I'm at and what I'm able to do, and still have fun and still be pushing myself to these kind of limits. And I think part of that, I'm able to do that because I spend so much time in the gym and on my body and, getting strong. I feel stronger now than I've ever been, just by staying on top of that kind of stuff.
Good for you. Yeah. Cam, what do you think? Role of strength for you briefly, and any, key exercises. People listening to this, you're into Skimo, you're into running, into multi-sport. If there's a couple things we should do, what are they?
Yeah, man, I don't want to say anything after Tim's I'll call it a sermon of everything good about strength training. That's brilliant and golden, and people should write down everything that he just said. But if I have to interject, if I have 3 exercises, I was thinking hard while you were chatting, Tim. I want to put an RDL, or single leg deadlift, get that single leg balance, posterior chain, and control. I'll have pull-ups for the same reason, like posterior chain and grip strength. And then it's hard not to say a good, strong, sexy back squat. But I wish I'm trying to find a place on my list of 3 to write plank variations in there, but I ran out of room. So that's the 3B in there too, of like plank variations with really good form, addressing any imbalances and weaknesses, and then all kinds of variations and movement patterns and challenges around that. I think that goes a really long way. And as far as like the role of it for me, Travis, like all this, the more comfortable you can be, the more like targeted and efficient and technically sound you can be with all this, of like having this be a good foundation of your training, is just going to make your strength, speed, power last longer. It's going to make you feel better. It's going to keep you healthy. It's going to, do all kinds of good things for your body and your brain.
That's wisdom right there, guys. And it's, many endurance athletes, if you're listening to this, it can be hard because you're like, I have 85 minutes and I want to spend 5 minutes getting dressed and undressed and the other 80 on my bike outside where it's beautiful, or skinning up and down, the hill. And I actually heard an interview with Gwen Rudy, it's Cam's Team USA teammate. And she said, one thing she's learned is, do one less lap skinning up and down the hill, even though that's super fun. And hit the strength, and whether that means gym, whether it means body weight, there's so many ways to do it, but make it accessible and make it consistent. It's so important.
Yeah,
As we wrap up here, Tim, a little more on mindset. I've heard you talk about things like compassion, moderation, humility, dedication. Maybe influences of Buddhism and other things. Where's that stuff at for you? And has that also been a shift from sort of the pro athlete years?
Uh, yeah, I think when I was pro athlete, I was a little more high strung, a little more stressed about things. Having a kid is the ultimate test of patience, and
Hmm.
so it has taught me to be very patient and kind of, a lot more goes over my shoulder than ever before. But I still believe my philosophy in life and training and everything has always been patience and consistency.
Mm.
And I preach that to my athletes as well. They come out and they're like, first workout, they want to go win a race. And I'm like, or if they have a bad race, and I'm like, hey, this, endurance sports is boring for the most part. The training is boring. And if I could tell you anything, it's just be consistent and have patience in the results. And, for the most part, I put that into my life as well. If I doing something, it's like, as long as I'm continuing to move forward and being consistent with it and have the patience to let that play out, then it usually works out in the right direction. Um, but yeah, I've become a lot more internal. I've always been a bit of an introvert and don't enjoy big crowds. And I can spend, like, if my wife and daughter go on a trip, I can go a week without talking to anyone and being in my own little world, um, and enjoy it, and not feel like, gosh, I'm lonely or anything like I thrive in that environment. Um, if I'm in a big crowd, I need to come home and have solo time to re-energize, which my wife is the opposite. She gets energy when she's in groups. And so, realizing those things about yourself and not, having anyone try and change you or beat you up about it, that's just maturing. And as I get older, embracing that and knowing that, for me to re-energize, I need that time by myself. And I don't know if that's, a philosophy or, part of my spirituality, but, um, I definitely enjoy that. And having my family understand that about me is really important, and understanding what their needs are. Um, as you get older, I think you become a little more comfortable with who you are.
Mm.
And, I think it's important to embrace that and not fight it at this point. But you get in front of, as a coach, you try and pass on some of this wisdom. Like, I still look back at one single coach that I had, and he was just a huge influence, not only in training but in life in general, and what I knew life could become. And you look back on those moments like, okay, just getting to that point.
Mm. Thanks for sharing that. I love it. My final question before we get to however Cam wants to wrap it up. Let's say there's an adult listening to this and they're like, I want to take on, some of that same role, or specifically with Skimo, getting kids into it, giving them access, giving them the fun competition, all of that, whether that's developing future Olympic athletes or just giving people, hey, here's a fun thing to do as a kid, regardless of how it does or doesn't play out with competition. It seems like you've done a great job building that program in Steamboat. We've heard of other examples. Sarah Cookler with the Silver Fork program in Utah. Summit County has got great stuff going. I think Boulder does. Max King up in the Bend, Oregon area is doing some great stuff with kids. What have you learned with that, Tim? And how do we organize that? How do we get kids out? I'm trying to do that here in Salida, and I'm struggling to motivate kids to ski uphill. Any words of advice in that area?
Well, we've started. I mean, when I moved to Steamboat, I got involved. We started, first was a middle school backcountry group,
Mm.
and that was just, kids had been introduced kind of by their parents, and we became kind of babysitters for these middle school kids and said, okay, we'll take them on some real adventures. And we took them out into the backcountry and built campfires and things like that. And then after coaching mountain biking all summer, I realized the kids on my mountain bike team, all they were doing was riding lifts in the winter. And I said, hey, a few times a week, let's do some uphill. If you're not going to do the Nordic team, then let's, really dive in and get you on lightweight gear. So you're not trudging. You're actually moving quickly like a mountain bike. So we kind of introduced it as, cross country mountain biking is Skimo and backcountry skiing is more like enduro, that kind of thing. But once we had the Skimo team established for a year, by the end of that first year, we had started taking the 10-year-old U10 groups, the alpine groups, out with these little adapters on their skis. Once a week, we took one group. We had multiple groups, and every week we took out a different group and introduced them. We did beacon searches and just took them up one hill, had some fun, took them, stuff that they're normally skiing, on piste and running gates and stuff like that. And we took them into a meadow and let them, go through the powder and have some fun and, a short little hike uphill. So that's what we're doing now. Still, we have this first U10s that we're introducing with the adapters on their skis and just their alpine gear. And now this year we have the U12s, and we're actually getting them in true Skimo gear and taking them out each week on once a week, and hoping that is our feeder system then to the Skimo team, that we'll have a junior and a senior team of Skimo. So and the biggest obstacle obviously is equipment, the funding, and the price of entry to our sport is astronomical. Any skiing is an expensive sport. It's a privileged sport. There's no denying that. I mean, I look at what the alpine kids spend on the amount of skis they need every year, and it's outrageous. Yeah. So everything we do, like I beg the community. We have a great, community of Skimo type athletes here. And when I first moved to town, I was like, hey guys, any extra gear you got, pass it on, And so I've got this, collection of old Skimo gear, boots, skis, everything. Basically, most of the kids, all they need to buy each year is skins, some fresh skins. And then I've got my other coach, who is kind of a pillar of the community, Dave Zink, who's he goes around the state. He does all the races. He just got back from Pierre Menta, where his son was racing, but he has been invaluable to our program, with donating skis and finding companies to donate stuff. Dynafit has been great with us, giving us such a great deal on new equipment. So each year my kids can order at a great discount. So Dynafit's been great, and Hagan has done the same thing for us. And Davida with La Sportiva is gonna, they're all they want the kids to do these, programs, because that's the future of the sport. And the only way they're going to keep selling skis and Skimo gear is by getting kids involved. So, we want to build this program. The club keeps asking me, Tim, are you in this for the long haul? And I'm like, yeah, these kids, I see this sport as a lifelong sport. Like, it's like running, it's like riding your bike. It's like, this is something a kid can do their entire life. Most kids don't play football their whole life, or, it kind of wanes, and this is a lifelong sport. And that's what our club is all about, is creating lifelong athletes. So yeah, I think communities can do it like easily, but that price of entry is tough, and you got to make it fun. Even with my high school kids who are competitive and going to races around the country, we still, every week we have an adventure night, where it's like, all right, guys, what are we doing tonight? We're boot packing, and we hardly are ever like just at the resort going up groomed runs. I mean, we are always off piste. We are going through the woods. To me, that doesn't serve, like, the majority of people just do go up groom runs for a workout and ski back down. And, we like the adventure of something. It's like, hey, let's go get every snow condition we can find in one practice, and do 2 boot packs, get to the top, and I let them pick the route a lot of times. And so you have to make it fun for these kids.
Nice. Make it fun. Great advice to any coach of any athlete at any level. Cam, wrapping it up.
Yeah, so Tim, if you're up for the challenge, I just have some burning questions that I've been thinking about for the last hour but couldn't interrupt with, and I want to rapid fire them at you, okay?
Okay,
So we're thinking speed and efficiency. Ready?
got it.
Okay, the first one might surprise you. Tell us the best part about Iowa.
Running on the gravel roads around Iowa City, where I went to
All
school.
right. What about a favorite triathlon training location?
Austria. I
Okay,
used to be sponsored by Red Bull, and they would bring me out there, and amazing place.
cool. I think we all know the answer, but I want to hear you say it. What picture is on your bike stem right now?
There's nothing actually.
No. All
All
right.
I need to, now that you've said that, I need to find a good one.
What
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
think the answer
Well,
was, Cam Smith?
You going to be
Or...
my daughter or something?
yeah, yeah.
She puts sticker. I'll say there's a RAR sticker, RAWR, because she puts RAR stickers on everything.
Perfect. Yeah.
So yeah,
Awesome. Well, tell us your daughter's favorite outdoor activity, because between you and your wife, you have 20 different things to choose from that you guys have done over the years. What does she like to do right now?
I would say it's skiing, backcountry skiing,
Cool.
and then the half pipe.
Awesome. Fun.
Mm.
Okay, last question. Tell us your dream Skimo race.
Oh, I would probably have to say it'd be actually no race. I just want to
Oh,
go
okay.
do like the Hout route
Mm.
or some huge traverse over in Europe. I have no interest in racing at all in
Okay,
anything.
cool.
That just is gone. I like to say I fired my last bullet years and years ago, and I don't. The competitive side of me is gone, but uh, the objective and adventure is very deep in me, and I do that stuff all the. I pick things I want to do all year, and that's what I shoot for now.
Awesome. Great answers. You're off the hook. Nice job.
Nice, guys. Thanks so much. I've really enjoyed speaking with both of you. Cam, thanks for coming in from Cam from Sham over there. Tim, thanks for sharing your time. Great job with what you're doing. I'm so glad you find this personal happiness mission, etc. And way to bring it forth with coaching kids in Skimo. So thanks again. Any
I
final thoughts?
appreciate it.
Anything else you want to add or anything?
No, patience and consistency. That'll get you through it.
All right.
And good luck, Cam. Let's
Awesome.
let's
Thanks
get
so
it.
much,
Let's get
Tim.
a spot over there for sure.
We're on it.
Yeah. There we go. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
Hey, thank you guys.